We must learn to have more faith in God's timing. Today, I want to stress the point that often, we get what we need, not what we want. And we just have to stay the course, have to stay disciplined, and keep putting the work in and day out, even though we may not be seeing the fruits of our labors. And I also want to stress the point to make sure that we are looking for the fruits of our labors in the right places. Because if you look, if you sow, if you sow somewhere and you try to reap somewhere else, you will obviously reap nothing. And you could have sowed amazing fruits, but they will go rotten because you're not looking in the right place and you will miss the harvest. And I think we can do that when, well, like as I stated, when we look in the wrong places for our fruits. If you are if you are working on your, spiritual life and you look for the fruits in your bank account, you will get discouraged because there will be none. And if you're working on your getting the number in your bank account to go higher, and that's all every action is devoted to, then you look for your fruits in your spiritual life, you will be discouraged as well. Because, clearly you're looking in the wrong place. And it's trite to say and it's obvious to say, but I think we all do it more than we think, all than we are even consciously aware of. I, for a long time, feel like I was looking for fruits in the wrong place. I was putting work into one area and expecting to see results in another area. And when I did not, this discouraged me. And I believe this made much of the fruit that I bore went rotten and was never reaped. And that's unfortunate because it would have been a good harvest. And I think we can also miss out on, say, the compound effect when we give up too early on a pursuit for thinking it's not working out anymore, for thinking it's a waste of time, for thinking that we haven't moved the ball in so long. I haven't been as good about making videos as of late. I have a bunch of videos scheduled, so every other day there's always a video. But obviously I know my day-to-day life and what I do and how I do it, and I haven't been reading as much, I haven't been writing as much, and I haven't been making as many videos as I should be. And I think this was all due to me, kind of getting fed up with God's timing, kind of being losing faith that it was all going to work out, and trusting that there's a reason for this happening. And I felt like my videos were becoming worse, and I felt like less and less people were watching. I felt like it was just it was just getting hard because I was looking I was looking for fruits in places that I shouldn't have been looking for fruits, in the numbers instead of, in the people that I am helping. I was focusing on what I didn't have instead of what I did have. And in the people I was helping, and in just the pursuit of wisdom and getting closer to God and all of those things. But the lack of the numbers going up, you know, disheartened me to keep pursuing as passionately as I was for, I felt like a year ago, maybe even maybe even a year and a half ago, I was like at my peak of this stuff. I was reading so much. I was writing so much. All my spare time was spent in contemplation and making videos and watching videos to learn. You know, car rides where I'd stop listening to music so I could contemplate my videos more and think deeper into things. You know, every spare second, I felt like I wasted no time. And I felt like back then I was closer to God and I was more virtuous. I was better in almost all ways. And, that discouraged me. But then I looked back at some of my videos from, the time in question. And yes, I was reading more. I was writing more. But when I watch the videos, I don't see better videos. And that kind of gave me a reality check. I feel like now my videos are better. I feel like now I have more to offer, more experience to offer, more tried and true and tested experience. And yeah, I think, as I have on my wall right there, no longer think deeply of the hazards, you will not see them in your future memories. I need to remind myself of that constantly because I'd like to think that, me a year ago was this, was this more than man figure of somebody who was always at peace, was always working hard, was always at tranquility, was always in tranquility, and was storming the gates of heaven, as Augustine says. And if I actually, truly, consciously, willfully put myself back in that time, I had similar worries to I have now. I still wasted time. Yes, I might have been more productive and all those things, but it wasn't as, fairy tale as I like to make it out to be. And I think we always do that. We always romanticize the past, the good old days. While you're in it, you think, oh, like, I just remember because what brought this up is, I was reading my past journals this morning and just like was like overwhelmed with how much I felt like how much I felt like I was, as I said, I was storming the gates of heaven so much more passionately back then. I was so much more stricter with myself. I was so much more disciplined. I was so much more all these things. And reading my journal, I do think that was the case. But then I also see myself, you know, beating myself up for things that I still do. I still beat myself up for. And then I remember in that time and place how much I was worrying about, you know, if I was gonna, ever leave my job or if I was ever gonna be, if I was ever gonna do the things I've dreamed of doing and all these things. And I remember like, oh yeah, it wasn't just all sunshine and rainbows back then. It was still hard. I still wasted time. I still gave into bad habits and vices and pursuits that I'm still trying to overcome. And it helps because I think when you romanticize the past too much, the present can become unbearable because you think it was so good back then. I was doing so well. I was on such a good path. Where did I go wrong? And then I think about it and I'm like, I didn't really go wrong. I mean, maybe I slept off the path a little bit. Maybe I haven't been doing all the right things. But sometimes it's not about what you do and what you don't do. Sometimes it's more about that. And I think lately that's been the case for me because I've not been in, as I said, I've not been in a pursuit of, I haven't been storming the gates of heaven like I once was. But I also haven't been fleeing the gates of heaven. I've just been, subtly moving closer. And, I should be storming, that's for sure. But I don't think you can always storm. You're going to come into times in your life where you start questioning the timing of things, and you're going to come into a time when discipline just seems so annoying, and you look and you think, what has it done for me? What is those hours spent, cursing pleasure and pursuing virtue? What have they done for me? What are the hours spent, instead of watching a show that I wanted to watch or TV that I kind of wanted to watch, I spent reading and writing. Was it all worth it? What was the point, for 270 subscribers and 100,000 views, and what was the point? And in those times, it's hard to storm. But as long as you're not doing the things actively destroying your progress, which I definitely have been, but not as not as bad as it could be. And the awareness of this, being truthful with yourself and coming to terms with it, is very valuable and essential, because that's where the growth can begin again. That's when you can start storming the gates of heaven again and becoming the best version of yourself, becoming beautiful in the eyes of God, and looking in the mirror and being proud of who you look at, being proud at the man who stares back at you, or the woman. And I know I started this video with the claim, we need to trust God's timing. And I think my fall has been nothing other than being fed up with God's timing, being sick that feeling like my labor hasn't I haven't seen as much fruit from my labors as I should have. But I think, as I stated, sometimes I look in the right places, but other times I simply don't. Sometimes, I spend a lot of time alone in solitude, contemplating the videos I make, because this is the stuff I believe truly matters. And not a lot of people also believe truly matter. So, you have to spend a lot of time alone if you want to have time to think about these things and talk to yourself about these things. And, at times I become lonely, and, you know, I have, I have very good friends, and they're always there for me, and I can hang out with my friends, and I do hang out with my friends. But, sometimes, I want to do something and I don't have anyone to do it with. And I think, how is this the case? How is this possible? And it's like, oh, yeah, because I like keeping my circle small, because because I love my solitude, because I don't even really want to hang out with those people anyways. So it makes no sense to expect to have a line of people at my beck and call when I want to hang out with somebody. The few friends I do have, the few very close friends that I do have, if they're occupied and busy, I shouldn't be upset that I don't have boatloads of friends, because I don't want boatloads of friends. I should remember I shouldn't look for fruits in that area, because those are not fruits I want. Maybe at rare times those fruits I do yearn for, but then I remember how trivial they are and how much I really don't want them, and it's just a passing, fleeting emotion that I don't want, I shouldn't cling myself to, that I don't normally have. And we just need to remind ourselves that. Yeah, I think I'm hammering home that point, and I think it's a point that needs to be hammered home, at least for me, because I do it so often. I do it so often. And it's hard too sometimes, I think, when we focus too much on time. Because I focus a lot on time. I don't like wasting time. I want to make the most out of my life. I have a sense of urgency because I don't want to have a trivial existence that I'm not proud of, that I'm not happy to wake up every day and go to work or do something like that. So I do feel that sense of urgency to, make something for myself while I have the time to make something for myself, before I get to a point in my life where I can't. Well, you always can, but where it's harder. It's pretty easy for me right now with the amount of time I have. So it's like the sense of urgency is there. But sometimes that sense of urgency can become crippling. and sometimes it can be too much. And sometimes that sense of urgency mixed with looking for your fruits in the wrong place and being fed up with God's timing, it's not a good recipe. It's a recipe that will lead you into pursuing pleasure for the sake of pleasure, just to feel something, just to get some gratification because you've been delaying it for so long. It's can lead you down past pursuing things that are against your principles that you thought you would never give into again. It can make you start becoming prideful and start saying, why this makes no sense. This person over here seems to have so much. Well, I work so much harder than them. While I dedicate myself so solely to virtue and these pursuits that are of utmost importance, and I have nothing to show for it. I have no fruits from my labors. And your pride can take over, and you can start feeling like you're entitled to something that you are not entitled to. And this is when you start falling off the wagon. This is when you start clearly not becoming the best version of yourself. And pride is one I've had to deal with a lot lately. For pride is the master of deception. And I believe, truly and utterly, pride. I was wise. I started to think myself wise, and that made me a fool. And that is also another reason for my downfall, because I became a fool in my own wisdom. And in Proverbs, I opened up Proverbs one day. Actually, I opened the Bible up randomly, and I opened up to Proverbs, and it said, "Do not be wise in your own estimation." And followed with something like, "You're a fool if you do this, be seen as wise in the eyes of God," or something of that nature. And I thought, yeah, I thought I was starting to become wise in my own estimation, and that made me a fool. Truly and utterly made me a fool. I started judging people for the things that I thought I had overcome. And I think God, in his all-knowing justice, makes us pay most for our pride. Jesus says in the Sermon on the Mount, why do you tell your brother about the speck in your eye when you have a beam of wood sticking out of yours? And I wish I wish that stuck with me more than it did. And I mean, it has stuck with me for a good reason, but I wish I just I wish I remember it more often when I'm judging others. Because so often when I judge people, either outspokenly or inwardly, which we should never do to begin with, but I'm human and I do, unfortunately, I start to fall into the same vices that I just was judging. I said, how is this person doing this? Like, it's so bad for them. It's such a waste of time. They're so foolish. What is wrong with this person? And then before I can even recognize it, I'm doing the thing I just judged. I'm doing the thing I thought I overcame. I'm doing the thing I thought I was so much better than this person for not doing. And then, who's the fool then? Because then you're reprehending yourself for doing something you thought you would never do again. And your pride's hurt, your ego's hurt, everything's hurt. And when you're having internal battles with yourself so often, so viciously, so much, how do you expect to do your best work? How do you expect, for me, I think these things are matters of utmost importance. Living well, philosophy, the pursuit of wisdom, getting closer to God, being seen as beautiful in the eyes of God. I believe these are the matters of utmost importance. I believe we should spend more time on our spiritual existence than our material existence. Augustine says, the insatiable desire of the poverty men call wealth. Yeah. That about sums up 99%, 99.99% of every human ever to live. The insatiable desire for the poverty that men call wealth. We sacrifice so much for the material world, and we sacrifice so little for our spiritual, our soul, and time. We all trade our time away for money, to buy things we don't want, to go places, to buy things we don't need, to go places we don't want, to work our whole lives. The insatiable desire for the poverty men call wealth is one of the best quotes I've ever read in my entire life. And it comes to us from Augustine, the church father. As always, videos all over the place. But I feel like I just needed to get something off my chest in this one. And really remind myself, because I hope these videos help you, and they are geared to help, but they are also at the same time therapy for me. Help me work through problems, help me get through things. And yeah, I need to be reminded, and maybe you need to be reminded too, to trust God's timing, to keep working, to not give up, to just stick with virtue, to stick to your principles, and trust that it's all going to work out. Trust that you'll look back and you'll say, you know what? I wouldn't have it any other way. Because obviously, these moments of doubt, these moments of failure, they're what make us who we are. But failure will never define you. But quitting will. No one will remember all your failures. They'll just remember the time you quit. And no one will remember your failures when you succeed. And failures do not define you. The only thing failures define is your fortitude, your determination. Much failures is very good because it shows that you never gave up. But a quitter, quitting, it says a lot about who you are. And yeah, I think we only really quit when we start losing faith in God's timing. And we start thinking, because who would quit if they knew that their fruits would pay, that their labors would pay off, that they would bear great fruits, that all their hopes and dreams would come true? Who would quit? But we get fed up with the notion soon. Soon these things will come to you. And soon maybe tomorrow, and soon maybe in 5 years. But you just have to stay the course. You just have to have faith. You just have to have trust. You just have to work hard. You have to realize that God has a plan for you, and for all you know, if you had received success when you wanted it, if you had got the fruits you so desperately wanted when you so desperately wanted them, it could have broken you. It could have ruined you forever. The worst thing to give a person with a drug addiction is money. The worst thing to give a person with a drug addiction is money. And who's to say the worst thing to give someone with an ambition addiction is success? Who's to say that's not the case? And, I love, Musonius Rufus once said, he apparently, one of his students asked him, why did you give this man who asked for money? He is such a bad man. He's done this, he's done that. Why would you give someone like this money? Do you not, Is there no justice? And Musonius Rufus said, if he is truly as you say he is, money is what he deserves. And if you truly believe in God and that the eternal life is more important than this temporal existence, that the soul is more important than the material, that the spirit is more important than the flesh, why do you yearn for material instead of the flesh? Sorry. Why do you yearn for the flesh instead of the spirit? Why do you yearn for earthly gains instead of spiritual gains? And why do you not? It's okay to want these things. It's okay to possess these things. There's nothing wrong with that. But you want them in such a passionate way that they take away your peace of mind because you do not have them obtained. And other people who you consider worse than you in your pride, which you should not have, they have the things that you want. But who's to say God doesn't just love you so much that he is refusing you, like a good father should, the things you want, because he knows they're going to kill you. He knows the things you'll give into. He knows the temptations you won't be able to resist yet. He knows you're not strong enough for success yet. He knows you're too ambitious to know when enough is enough. So he's withholding from you all that he wants to give you until you are ready. So make yourself ready so you can receive the gifts that God wants to give you. Trust God's timing. God is outside of space and time. So God has a perspective that we cannot understand. He can see how this will kill you if he gives it to you. And he can see how this will make you if he deprives you. And if you're like me and you pray, thine will be done, thine kingdom come, then your prayers are being answered when you are deprived of things, for that is God's will. His perfect, just, beautiful will. And have faith in it. Trust in his timing.